nothing but faith. There's things far too great that I want to accomplish. I'm hoping 25 hours a day, but something good works out, and I'm just like, dang. Think everything's gonna be okay. Yeah, I'm like, dang. Think you might just know the way. I'm like, dang.
Welcome to Dang.
Dang.
I'm Todd Bridges.
I'm supposed to say welcome to
Well,
Dang.
you didn't say it soon enough, so what's your name?
I'm Betty Jo Bridges.
That's right.
All right. Well, today on Dang, we're getting real about what it takes to build deep, authentic relationships across racial lines. And our guest today is Dr. Deborah L. Plummer, a psychologist, educator, and best-selling author. She's worked with everyone from Fortune 500 companies to hospitals, schools, and faith communities, helping them build better diversity strategies and stronger organizations. She also founded the master's program in diversity management at Cleveland State and has spent decades guiding people through the complexities of race, identity, and connection. And today, we're helping that whether it's friendship, family, or marriage, that she can help us understand how we go beyond just diverse and become truly connected.
Yeah. That's something that America needs bad.
Yes. Welcome, Dr. Plummer. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Plummer, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. It's really cool.
I appreciate it. Now, what led you to focus on your work on race and cross-race relationships?
What led me to do that was really because, like a lot of people, you assume that your life is the one, that's typical and is relevant to everybody else. And I was walking one time with a good friend who is a Black woman and has similar background to me. And she asked me, why did I have so many white friends? And I thought that was a very odd question because I assumed that she had white friends too. And I thought, okay. And then being the academic that I am, we had this conversation, but then I went on to research and I found out I was the outlier, that most people did not have friends that crossed racial lines. And so I became very curious about why that was, and also why I had so many white friends and what was that.
I'm originally from San Francisco, so I didn't know what racism was. Because we had friends that were every color. It just didn't matter. You were just friends. I grew up in a neighborhood that had everybody in it, very well mixed. So we were friends with everyone. And when I moved to Los Angeles, that's when things changed for me.
Yeah. And geography makes a big difference. I similarly grew up, in a predominantly white setting. I was raised Catholic, and so that was, predominantly white. Yeah. And when you're in that kind of environment, you're looking at each other as human for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, with Todd and I, we're getting close to our third year of marriage, our third year anniversary. And I was having a conversation with my son recently. He's 12, and he was asking me what Juneteenth was, because it's like on the calendars now. And I was trying to explain to him, I'm not exactly sure. I know it has a holiday. I think it has something to do with race. Do you know what it is?
Yes, it's when we were freed as slaves, basically.
Okay, I'm sorry that I didn't know that.
It's okay.
Anyway, I was explaining, I remember that it came on the calendar around when the Black Lives Matter movement happened. And my son was like, yeah, he's like, that's really interesting, Mom, because I really didn't understand that, because he's like, I didn't know what they were talking about with Black Lives Matter. And he was like, even with Todd, he's like, he's not black, he's brown. And I'm like this tan color. And I was kind of just like, well, honey, you had friends, because I actually have a pretty mixed race family. And I'm like, he had cousins you were playing with that were Black boy. And I'm like, you knew about race before that. He's like, I didn't know it was different. He's like, I didn't know there was anything that we would categorize that at. He was like, they were just all, they were my cousins, they were my friends. Like, there was just no difference. And I think that's what you're saying, is that there's in some areas, that's not as prevalent. You don't see those, in San Francisco, there was no difference.
Because I don't believe that racism I don't believe you just grow up racist. It's taught. It has to be taught to you.
Absolutely. We all have a racial socialization process. we learn about racial identity and who we are as a racial being. And I think what happens if you don't have that interjected into your parenting, into your school life, into your social life, then what happens is that you just grow up, thinking about yourself as a human. And then we know in that racial identity resolution process, when you bump up against those differences, that's when you begin to learn that process. Because we have so many social loadings that get in our head that comes from outside, not necessarily in our our internal socialization process. By that I mean our inner circle.
Yeah, I got injected with it. It was like me and my brother were we were playing football in Culver City, and when I first figured it out was actually we were going to buy a house in Culver City, and they talked to my mom on the phone and says, "Oh yes, Miss Bridges, your credit's perfect. You got the down payment. Your house is waiting for you. We can't wait to see you guys." When we went down there, we all have these afros, and they were like, "Oh, we don't have houses here anymore." And that's when we're like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah. And
then my mom had to explain it to us, and we had a friend. My mom, one of her white friends, just ended up signing it and signing her name to it. Actually, that's how we got the house. And the other interesting part about it, I'd never heard the N word before in my life. And me and my brother were walking down the street on our way to the football practice, and somebody drove by and called us the N-word, and our Spanish friend was really pissed. Like, "Man, you hear what he said?" We said, "Yeah." They used that means an ignorant person who can't read and write. That's not us. We're very smart. That's what we thought it. That is what it means. But we didn't know it was derogatory. We didn't know that part.
Absolutely. And I had a similar experience. So I'm thinking it. Because depending on where you grew up and what you heard. I always call my parents were the first diversity management teachers because they showed us how to relate to people in our core identity as humans and to do so without fear. And that's the way I assumed everybody was going. So I had to be told the same way you were what the N-word meant when I was called that. I had to be told, that, wow, people were saying things or not reacting to me similar to how they might react to a lot of other people just because, of the color of my skin.
How old were you when that happened?
I was, let's see, about 11 or 12 when I went to Girl Scout camp.
Okay.
And I recall after my mother dropped us off, it was myself and my sister, and the camp counselor said to the other one, "Thank God there's only 2 of them."
Yeah.
Oh.
And by that time, I was having my own racial identity, like awakening process, because before that, we were going downtown as like 8th graders, and we were going around, and Judy Schwelgin, who was white, said, "Hey, we're going to let's go eat lunch here." It was a little more expensive than McDonald's. So I was like, "Oh my God," and she goes, "This is where my mom and I eat." And when we went in, they said, "She can't sit, or we can't sit down," because there was two others of us that was Black. And I didn't know what that meant. I thought Judy had done something really that
you're like, "Judy didn't mess
let
this
her
up."
sit down.
Right.
And then she got all indignant and said, "Well, if they can't eat here, I'm not eating here either." And just kind of said, "Come on." And I was like, "What does this mean?"
Yeah. And I think that when that happens, there's a part when it happened to me, it's a part of being humiliated, and then humiliation turns to anger, and then it turns to rage because you don't understand, why are you treating me this way? I'm just a human being.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a question though. In your work, what made you found people that help you, to beyond racial and actual, like, helped you get beyond this? What color people do you use that help you?
What color people?
You need to change that, honey. Your writing is just okay. My wife writes.
No, it's
very
what it
like
says. It says in your work, what
Just
have you
the-
found helps people build trust across
okay, but that's
racial
still
lines.
it doesn't.
It's very clear,
No,
honey.
it's how you talk, not how I talk.
Okay, let me hear it again then,
Yeah,
so I
okay.
know, so
Okay.
I'm on track.
In
Would you
your
like to-
work, what have you found helps people build trust across racial lines?
Perfect.
Yeah, because I had to slow it way down and speak it like that's not how I would say it. But.
Sorry, Dr. Plummer.
But I love that question because trust, we know right now, mistrust and fear creates
Yeah, it wasn't your fault. Sorry, it's my fault.
conflict, and it limits all of our human potential.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we are driving what's happening right now is that we are using differences as a
Yes.
threat to be feared,
Yeah.
rather than, oh, this is someone who's different, or this is a different experience, or different cultural background. We have to learn those competencies to help us, continually navigate them in a successful and efficient way. So fear is a driver. It's
Oh
a
yeah.
huge driver.
And
And
go
and
ahead.
we don't trust each other.
No.
It's part of my work in building, trust as a foundation to healthy relationships, as a foundation to a healthy community and society.
Yeah.
So
I think
what
that's
we're
absolutely right.
yeah, and what we're doing is trying to really build back trust, which is really hard because that has to happen by first you acknowledge,
Yes.
then you can heal.
Yeah, and it's trust going both directions too, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's very easy to sit in the place where you're at, like you were saying, like we all think everybody's experience is like our own, but it's easy to sit here and be like, yeah, I need to learn to trust them. But it's like, yeah, but they need to learn to trust me too. It goes both ways.
And I think it goes back further than what we realize. I think it goes back to the Moors, because the Moors had dominated Europe for so long. I think that's where all this hate and stuff started from. The Moors were strong and confident, but they also were, rulers for a long time. And
Todd's a real history buff.
well, yeah.
Well, it's really embedded in who we are as human beings.
Yeah,
We're all
yeah.
tribal people, and so we have to learn how to manage differences and how to navigate
Yeah.
our multicultural and multiracial society. And we cannot, underestimate how much fear as a driver for that,
Yeah.
gets in that, and how if we're treating differences right now as a threat to be feared,
Yeah.
it doesn't really help us. We all get siloed and stay in our cocoons.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what people don't understand, the more people help each other, the better it is. Because what'll happen is if they go for one party, they're going to go for the next party, and then the next party, then you don't have any parties. So if we learn to unite and work together, everyone stays. And
I
really.
think what we're talking about right now is often on the interpersonal level,
Yeah. Okay.
but then systemic level. And what really, systemic racism does not have an identifiable individual perpetrator.
Gotcha.
I think that's why when George Floyd was murdered, it was we had all that conversation about systemic racism because the first time we could see how it worked.
Yeah.
We had someone, who was white, actually, for over 9 minutes, choking a black man to death, and all of these people standing around and could not do anything about it, or
Yes.
try to do something. And that's how systemic racism, works. It's more in our policies, our practices, and our procedures that, do not allow people, set up barriers, and it's embedded in concrete
Yeah.
that racism is there. So interpersonally, somebody might not have a problem with you personally, but
Yeah.
systemic racism is still concretized in our society.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely can see that. For
Well, and I
sure.
think it's interesting too that as like I said, Todd really loves history, and if you look back historically too, I think it's really odd that back because I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and there was a policy in place within our church related to like the priesthood up until I think it was the early 80s or something. And Todd and I have talked about this a lot, and it's something that we've studied. And one of the things that we've talked about was how when our church was being founded in the 1800s, the early 1800s, and that at that time it was weird that the policies, what people were actually considered normal as far as race relations, they were wanting an equality, but like still keeping it separate. This idea of blending and intermixing was really odd to them back there as well, and I think it's related to fear. Can you speak to that? Like, I'm not a PhD like you, so, but I think there's something here that it's like even in the past they were afraid of how does this work if we mix together? And now we've mixed together, but there's still some of this like legacy of that we were, because like that separate but equal doctrine, like that's what I'm talking about. This idea that what they were originally fighting for was still to be separate but equal. And that's that's not what I would want today. We want it to be blended. But anyway, sorry, please jump
Well,
in.
you're on the right track, actually, because it is all about, how in our own identity development do we, make meaning up for ourselves and feel whole.
Yeah.
And then when we encounter differences, it's still threatening. And so we try to frame or reframe our environment to match what we need. Yeah, and
Right.
if we need things to stay the same and we feel comfortable, if everybody stays in their place and everybody, only relates to those who look like them, talk like them, think like them, walk like them, worship like them, etc., because they're fabulous people, that's within our comfort zone.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
people stay within their comfort zone. So that's what it means by the fear we're talking, the
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
Because when we were saying fear, like right now, is on both sides, it really is.
Yeah.
One can be justifiable fear, for people of color, it definitely is because if you don't make, white people feel comfortable or, take care of it or do those certain behaviors, it could cost you your life.
Yeah.
But the other fear is that, if fear for the side of whites, is really about the world that I knew, the balance that I knew, the priorities that I knew, the ranking that I knew, that we're all just going to flip this script. And now, we're going to be in a world where everybody's going to discriminate against us.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest fear, is that they
Is
think
that
that's
was
gonna
that
happen.
like the
Oh, yeah.
historical fear was?
Well, the historical their fear is that people are going to just start discriminating because there's more minorities, especially in America. They feel that people are going to turn the tables and do to them what they did to all of us. But I just don't think that we as a people think that way. I don't think we do. I don't think that way. I don't think we do. I think it's different for us.
I think you're generous because because of your racial socialization process,
Okay.
and also your experience as an actor and all of those
Yeah.
other things. And for you, Betty Joe, in terms of all of those other things, that we all are culturally and racially encapsulated in the sense that we think that our experience is normal, and especially if it's functioning, then we think that that's the way everybody else is functioning. But I can tell you that fear-based is really there. I
Oh,
keep
yeah.
this hourglass on my desk all the time because I use it all the time in the experience. And what you were just saying, Todd, was spot on because right now, let's take race. Okay, so if we believe that white has been the dominant race, which means all of the policies, practices, procedures, the way of knowing, the way of being is structured around whiteness, and I'm not saying individual people, but whiteness. And the fear is that all what's going to happen is we're going to flip this script, and now this doesn't go fast enough, but now it's going to be Black, Indigenous, people of color, Asians who are making all of it, especially Black because of our history
Yeah.
in the United States, are going to be making this. So we're in this tug of war, this is what we're doing. And because we treat differences as a threat to be feared.
Yeah.
So the work that we do, is about how do we level this playing field? How do we put this and actually even break this glass so that we are, relating to each other in this kind of a manner?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the question I would have for you, because I can tell you my exception. The people say, what are the biggest myths about race, about interracial relationship? Now, I can tell you that it seems like, I'm not saying everyone, but some people, I think, lose the identity of who they are. Like, I know what color I am. I know what color I am. I'm happy with the color I am. I'm not trying to change that. I'm going to be who I am. And I know that God made me the way I am to be who I am. So, but I do know some people that are in interracial relationships that think they're not the color they are. And I think that, how can you speak on that one?
And again, that is so spot on.
Yeah.
And when I say that is because it's not necessarily sometimes they don't know who they are, or they haven't lost who they are. They haven't known who they are.
Gotcha.
Or experienced, because we all have a racial identity resolution process. We talk about intellectual development, physical development, mental, emotional development. We don't talk about racial identity development, but yet we go through that process.
Yeah.
And if you start out with a race neutral process or everybody's human, then you don't have what gets evoked by us from society. So I've had in my clinical practice, I've had couples who have come in, and I have two case studies in my book. One was, a Puerto Rican man who was married to a white woman and never saw it as a problem until when he started to see how his children were more comfortable with her family and didn't know Spanish, didn't know any of the cultural pieces. And then he found himself at a, professional setting with all HR professionals with this group of Hispanics. And then suddenly his wife became really white to him, and he became, so he was going through his own racial identity process. And people do that. That relationship actually ended in divorce. And the other one was a Black woman married to a white man, and never really thinking about herself as a Black. It in a racial identity process, we're a human who happens to be Black,
Yes.
or this person who happens to be Black, like you're a professional, etc.
Like you have curly hair or you have straight hair. It's just a part of, it's
exactly. It's not all the racial loadings that get with us.
Yeah.
And it only came in her job performance when she was an executive, and so then she was asked to mentor Black people and to be the sponsor for the executive the employee resource group, and she felt really uncomfortable. And then she began to think about her kids. Were they going to ask her questions about race that she wasn't experienced? Was she really like sending them out in 0-degree weather without coats, because she wasn't giving them the protection or the education that they needed as biracial children in this world? So that discovery process was one that was really challenging for her, and she had to do a lot of work emotionally and intellectually.
Yeah, my kids are mixed, but they know what color they are. They know they're Black. They know that. But they don't see things like we see them. Because I'm a lot older. I go further back to the 60s. So I know what it was like for us in this country. But sometimes I'm like, there's a lot of things I don't think she sees, but I can see it. You know what I mean? I can see when you get that look. You know what I mean? I know what that look is, and I'm like, wow. You know?
And we've talked about that because for me, I remember when the Black Lives Matter thing was happening as well, being confused because I was like, but slavery ended and Martin Luther King, as far as my experience, I was like, this is all in the past. Like, what's happening? I didn't have a reference point for it in modern life because I didn't experience it. And I wasn't really close with anyone who did. And then it's so interesting that God, brought Todd right into my life. And he's like, oh, you want to hear about it? Here, I will tell you exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
And it has been very educational because I didn't have those reference points for what that looked like in modern day. But what my parents had taught me was that we're the same, that there is no difference. And so sometimes I still get confused when you're saying, like what you just said, you're like, well, my kids know they're Black. And I'm going, well, but because I want the identity to be like what you're saying, that we're human.
Yes.
So help me understand that.
Like in this country, 1% Black, you are Negro. That's how it works. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
There's a visibility about race. I think that, Bettijo, that when you, like every day I get up and I'm a Black woman,
Yes.
And I know that, I can see that. And the day I walk out and say to the world, okay, I'm human, or I'm just acting like I'm human, so I'll bump up against something.
Yes.
That will remind me that I am a Black woman.
Oh, okay.
And because of the visibility of race and gender, so maybe switch to another experience about how you are as a woman.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, well,
yes, that
you're exactly right.
Exactly. Well, that's what it's like for Black. So I think that's, Todd, what you were saying, my kids know they're Black, but, hopefully we're getting to a world where they will know that they're biracial and they can start to act out of that identity and whatever that means and create that for themselves.
Well, something that I tell Betty Jo a lot is, okay, even look at the White House. They elected a Black man, but they don't want to elect a white woman. It's just, or a woman, a Black woman especially. But
Black,
Black ones is really difficult. But Barack Obama was there 8 years. And I get so upset when people say, well, he didn't do anything for black people. I'm like, he's the president of the United States. He's supposed to do things for Americans. It shouldn't be a black and white issue. You know, I mean, he's going to go in there and say, okay, we're going to start having this and that. You know, it's just, that's not how it works. And I think people were looking at that, you know, for me, it was a milestone because it was like, I never thought in my entire life of growing up and dealing with all the racism I dealt with that I would see a black president. Never thought that ever. And by seeing that, it made me cry because I was like, oh my gosh, it finally is something has happened that I didn't believe would ever happen.
Yeah. For black people, I mean, exactly that. I used to say, pigs will fly before I see somebody black as a president.
Yes.
And that night I sat there and go, oh my gosh, pigs are flying.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And we're getting phone calls and people were coming. But I also think that when we say things like, you know, he didn't do things for black people.
Yeah, that's a weird thing,
I think we have to examine, you know, again, all of those social loadings and the messages about what that means.
Yeah.
Because when you're creating jobs, when you're having a healthy economy, when you're, you know, taking care of healthcare, when you're doing housing, all of those things are black causes too.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
You know, human causes. So what does that mean? And that again, you know, think about that hourglass. I know for the people who are listening, they can't see that, but if you, it's about, you know, that twisting back and forth, you know, because we're afraid, you know, that somebody's going to take something away from me that I don't have. And so we have to stop looking at this as a zero-sum game.
Yes.
It isn't.
I think we all have a lot of skin in the game.
This plane goes down, all of us. I don't care whether you're in class or, you know, or in the very back row.
That's right.
We're all going down together.
Oh yeah, I mean, if this country gets invaded, they're not gonna say don't shoot him because he's black American. You know, they're gonna want all of us Americans. They don't care what color we are. You know, so I think you're absolutely right. We all got skin in the game. We got to start looking at it that way.
Dr. Plummer, what is kind of like the overview of how do you help? How do you go into organizations? What do you teach them that we can pass along today to listeners?
Oh, well, thank you for that. Right now, I have a nonprofit. I always say that I failed retirement completely. Just, you know, in starting this nonprofit, but I felt very strongly, particularly after the time of racial reckoning, that we needed to turn us and them into we. So it's called Getting to We because it is about that. How do we relate to each other in our shared core identity as humans, you know, without fear? And we've been talking about that. It's about building trust. So we do a lot of things to help people have forums or times when they can come and have these prickly these conversations that often can be prickly, that people can talk about their stories. The power of storytelling is very important. But then how do we move those conversations to action? How do we start to do things that says, okay, you know, now I know that you're in my life. How can I vote in your interest? How can I make policies and practices that are in your interest? All of those things, all of our interests, because before we used to be able to come to the public space and be able to say, hey, this is what I need. Let's make sure that, you know, I'm included in all of these policies, practices, and procedures. But right now, what's happening that people are coming to the public space and saying, you know, this is what it has to be, and we're enforcing rather than informing. And this is what we want, and it's going to apply to everybody. So everybody has to do this. Everybody's thinking, and this is the priority. So we have to have people have those skills of how to hold multiple realities, identities, and perspectives, how to connect intention and impact, how to use social privilege. And we all have social privilege. Well, you know, in some area, may not be in race, but often in ability or our education or whatever, but how to use our social privilege for as a life skill and for mutual benefit, and how to move from certainty to curiosity. You know, we had a little bit of that conversation too when we're saying, wait a minute, you know, I thought this is the way it was, and staying curious about our reality, because it is not just the way we grew up in that culturally and racial encapsulation or that racial myopic thinking.
I know what I'd like to ask you, Doctor. How did you get past when someone says, wow, you're very well spoken. Because that's something, you can hear a lot of.
Absolutely. And then the next step, of course, is they attribute it to the fact of the schools that I went to and all the white
Yes.
people who taught
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no.
And so it is, it's I think there's a d- a push for self-care right now. Particularly racial self-care for those who are of color, for BIPOC, Black Indigenous people of color, particularly. And by that I mean learning how to do your own work and keep yourself in terms of boundaries or whatever it is that
Yeah.
you need. For some people, sadly, it means that they don't cross racial lines often, but I get concerned about that because again, we're all in this together and we don't reach our full human potential unless we are bumping up against those differences. But I think that given our racialized and polarized society, self-care is really important.
Yeah.
So sometimes it means I just need to be with my own people and chill, and other
Yeah.
times it means, and my own people could also include people across racial lines who get you, or
Yes.
your soul is speaking to their soul, and some whatever it is that you need to do to feel grounded. And right now in this wobbly world, that's really important.
Yeah, I have learned I communicate differently with my black friends than I do my white friends.
Yes.
Because I think if I communicate the same way on each spectrum, it would be always misunderstanding. So I can communicate like with my friends. I went to back to the South recently, and those friends you got to to me I communicate with them Southern style.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning I didn't understand anything they were saying. They would say things and you're like, what does that
one
mean?
of the I've done focus groups on this, and one woman I thought put it very well. She said, I have my white friends, but with my friends who are black, I can go quick and deep.
Yes.
So when I go quick and deep, I just go with my black friends.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. I can say certain things to them that's not offensive, but to the other people it may be very offensive. Yeah,
Or
definitely.
maybe not understand it, or just not know it because it's not in that circle. So
Well,
then
when
you
people don't
hear-
understand, they get offended usually. That's what seems to happen.
yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah,
you
oh
know.
yeah, definitely.
I know that when I have entertain or have parties, etc., not many people are in a racially mixed setting. And I always laugh because there's always a time when white people get there on time or even early, and then and then black people get there when they get there.
CP time.
And then, so there's only a couple of maybe an hour or so when it's really racially mixed, because then the white people are gone and then the black people are hanging out. And so
Yeah.
I noticed that dynamic as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Well, my wife uses CP time. I don't, but she does. My mom taught me that, hey,
Yeah,
you
Betty
got to
was
be there.
always
Either
early.
if you're half an hour early, you're half an hour late. That's how my mom used to put it. So I had to always get there an hour or something early. So I'm just so used to that.
I didn't used to be late, but kids make me late.
And
Now
that's
it's
why they
just a
call it-
bad
I'm gonna
habit.
say it's also women's oppressed time.
yeah.
It's CP time.
is
It's
true.
women's oppressed time because it's anybody who doesn't have the luxury of being able to say, "Hey, I can just walk out or I control my own time."
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I tell you, even sometimes, okay, like, this is the funniest story because I mistook it as racism and it wasn't. I was, Scott, who I was just with, took me to meet this guy named Dewey. And this guy was like a really country guy, really country. And he'd say stuff like, yeah, and then he'd look at me like this. And then he did that for like 15 or 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, this racist son of a gun, I'm going to punch this dude in the mouth. And he keeps doing it. And all of a sudden he goes, where's that little feller? And I'm like, oh, I felt so embarrassed. That's what he recognized me from the show. And he was asking about Gary Coleman. And I was like, oh.
He said, "How did you grow up?"
Yeah, he's like, where's that little feller? You gonna bring him too? And I'm like, no. Oh my gosh. I felt so small. And that's why we shouldn't project how we feel on the people until we know the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we call marrying intention.
Yeah,
connection,
yeah.
Intention and impact.
Because I'm judging him
the
for what I had
intention-
learned about the South, so.
Yeah.
What about, okay, so there's a lot of parents that listen to our podcast. What advice do you have for parenting with regards to this racial identity?
Thank you for that question because it is so rich. because that's where it starts. If first of all, if the parents don't have friends that cross racial lines or a socialization process, what they're going to do, a racial socialization process where they're talking about race or they bring it up in the home, then all we're going to do is, repeat the patterns of the past. Not only repeat the patterns of the past, but we're going to make those normal and normalize that.
Yeah.
And kids really are astute to that. The same child who wouldn't, would understand, why, wouldn't understand why a parent wouldn't let them have, say, Malcolm over for a sleepover, and get mad at them because they wouldn't understand that at a young age. When they get to be adolescents and adults, or young adults, and they are concerned about who they're dating and who, and what they're doing, in racially mixed, they get that. And that's because we live in this racialized society. So parents can help to break that norm, and be able to have honest conversations with their children about this, and also talk about race in ways that say, hey, we understand, that in our society there are groups, there are racial groups, and that have the talk, like we say, the talk that the same people of color have to have with their with their children. The whites have to have that as well. And I think that once we begin to recognize that racism is like a cancerous tumor, it's out there and it's affecting the quality of all of our lives, and talk about it from that perspective, we're going to be much better. And I think there are so many wonderful tools out there now, and stories and books and TV shows and, podcasts and all kinds of things like this one, where people can listen to and get curious.
Sandra Bullock said something really interesting. She goes, she never realized what a black mother really had to worry about until she adopted black kids. And then she was frightened for her kids when they went out because she knows what the world was like.
Right.
So that's interesting when she found out that way.
When you have cross-racial experiences and friendships, you get to know how the world works.
Oh, yeah.
It's, if you take your car back, to the rental, and there's those spikes that are there, that says, do not back up because you're going to ruin your tires. And when you are white, or when you're in any of the dimensions of diversity where you share the experience, where you don't feel as whether it's age or health or education or whatever, or that when you're riding through life, you get to ride through life, with those spikes. Just lie down, just lie down, so for white people, they just lie down. And for people of color, they have to figure out how to navigate this world without those, because those spikes might not lie down. And if they go over it and they ruin their tires, who knows, who's going to be responsible or accountable for that. So it's a different kind of navigation process. And people, when you have friends that cross racial lines, or children, you understand that and see that. And I have so many examples. I'll tell you one really quick, funny one. I visit a friend of mine who I went to graduate school with, and when I'm in the same city, and one time I was there because I had a talk, and we went out to dinner, and it was a white neighborhood, totally white restaurant. I was the only black woman in the room. And as we are waiting for our waitress to come, we're talking, so we didn't notice how long it was. And then we look around and everybody else is eating. And she says to me, "We haven't even gotten bread." She goes, "Oh my gosh." And she goes, "This always happens. It's because of you." It happens when I'm with you. And she gets that. In other words, she gets the fact that life is different.
Yeah. That is a really interesting example to be with the tire spikes, because I'm one of those people that when I'm pulling over, even if I'm going straight, like I get nervous still that it's like not going to go down like it's supposed to, which is really good to help me relate to like what I think that's a really good analogy that, if you were having to go over those all the time. That's a really good analogy.
Well, like it was like when we were trying to, deal with the bank, and I was like, we were like, me and my brother and sister were like, honey, you go deal with them. Because I knew we would get what we wanted if she went and talked to them.
Well, the first time
If we just stayed away in the background.
I remember when we were first dating too, before, we'd only been together like a month or two, and we were at the store and we were buying a gift card, but we had picked it up over in like the electronics department. And then we were going to go check out at the front of the store. And you were like, well, I can't carry this up to the front of the store. And I was like, why? Like, fine, give it to me. I'll carry it to the front of the store.
Can.
And I didn't, there's a lot of situations like that where you can see the imprint that is left from all of the experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like I haven't been there for,
Yeah.
I don't know if I've been there for any experiences really where.
No, we haven't. I don't,
but
I found Arizona to be different than
he had asked me that.
and
He's
LA.
like, what's Arizona like? How is it? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, he's like,
yeah.
is it bad for black people? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so.
It's like, in
I
LA,
have no
you drive
idea.
in, the police are looking at you, constantly. Out here, you're driving, they ain't even looking at you. They ain't even bothering you.
So I guess
And the
it's
fact
good.
that you
but-
asked that question as a preparation,
Yeah.
what's this like? I've often done that, for friends. Is this restaurant comfortable for me or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that you say, wait a minute, I don't know. And that makes sense. You don't know.
Yeah.
But
And
it
it's
is a different world.
But
Yeah.
those are the kinds of things that started to teach me, right? Because I don't have to ask that question. I don't wonder that, right?
It's like
There's a
out here is.
wonderful SNL skit you can find that's on that app, the grocery stores or wherever you go and it's cardless. I mean, cashless, so you just walk out because it's scanning. It's wonderful because I use it to show that exactly what gets evoked from other people and how they're not aware and what other people need to say. Wait a minute, hands up, I didn't do it. I'm gonna pay for it.
Oh, yeah.
You've already scanned it. It's really very enlightening.
Yeah, it was like the mask, the whole mask. I was afraid. I'm like, man, I'm not going outside in no mask. And it wasn't because I didn't want to protect myself, because, man, I'm going to get shot by somebody, by the police, and it's like I had to go in the bank with a mask. I was like, man, I'm not going to the bank with a mask. They're going to think I'm trying to rob the bank.
You mean during COVID? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because even like the guy, Ryan Coogler, the big director of Black Panther, he went to the bank to get his own money, and he almost got arrested. They thought he was trying to rob the place.
Oh, wow.
And that was his own money.
You've been arrested for driving your own car.
Yeah, I have been arrested for driving my own car too. Told me I stole my own car. That happened to me. So those imprints on me I get what you're saying. And what I try to do now is to go places with an opener mind, a bigger open mind, and don't let myself stay shell shocked in that, because I'll go in there and I could judge every one of them, before I even get in there. He's racist. They may not be, but I'm going to be picking that out because I'm trying to, and I think it's because I'm trying to protect myself, So now I have to go in with an open mind and then let the person do something to prove to me that they are, and then I won't deal with that person. I'll deal with someone else.
So, Dr. Plummer, you've been using a term you were calling, I think you said racial socialization process. Is that what you were saying?
We have a racial socialization process.
Can you break that down? Yeah, help me
Yeah.
understand that better. That concept. Yeah.
Right. It's really, all of us are socialized. When we say socialized, we learn how to be in this world. And so we learn about who we are as a racial being through our parents, what they say to us, what they don't say to us, what we see about people who are like us on the news, or what we read. All of those get imprinted in a very, very early age. Which is why, for example, right now in the Black community, they try to make sure you can do anything. You can, you're a person of, of merit. You can, and worth. So putting those self-esteem, but we all have that socialization process. When you think about your family, the things you were taught about other people, your intellectual capacity, things that were cool to do and not cool to do, who you should hang around with and who you can't hang around with. We can all break that down. How your house is decorated, what music you like, what Black people or white people do or don't do. The example I always use in terms of the socialization process, I'm a lover of dogs, and our dogs used to sleep in the bed with us, and my friends would always say, "Well, black people don't sleep. Dogs don't sleep in bed with black people. Black people don't sleep with their dogs." And I would say, "Well, I'm a black person, and I do." First time I would not say that to people because I would know they would think, "Well, you're not black, or why are you doing that? It's like white people."
Yeah.
But then every time I use that example or express it, there was always someone who was black came up and said, "My dogs sleep with us too."
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I mean by socialization process. What norms?
Well, trust me.
So it's a process that's happening whether you think about it or not, right? Like it's
Exactly.
automatic.
Yeah, because I would let my
Exactly.
dog sleep on the bed, and you would not.
No, well,
See, I would, but she ain't.
It has nothing to do
My
with being
dogs
black
ain't
or
going
white.
nowhere near the bed because of her. But if it was for me, I'd let them hang out in the room and
There
jump
would
in the
be
bed.
no room in the bed.
I know they're very big. That's why. They are big.
Dr. Plummer, what does a truly inclusive, connected relationship look like and feel like, do you think? What is...
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's acknowledging the fact that there are racial differences and knowing that in our environment, it's, things are going to be evoked differently for you versus someone else, and because of the visibility of race. And there's no getting around that. And because we are in a racialized society, and there's no getting around that either. And that acknowledging and realizing that there are practices, policies, laws, et cetera, that are affect, people of color, black indigenous people of color, differently than it does for white. And not just thinking, we're all the same.
Yeah.
We all are human, and we all have experiences in life, but because of that, we are not treated the same. I think we have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
To be able to say, okay, racism exists, but it's not attached to people. It's attached to the culture. It's attached to the environment. I said before, it's like a cancerous tumor that's out there affecting the quality of all of our lives.
Yeah.
So that's basic, for having I talk about the different kinds of friendships in my book, but to get to the one that's the friendship of heart, where you can have those, the trust, and that you can have the intimacy, the level of depth of intimacy, and not necessarily, I'm not talking about romantic intimacy. I'm just talking about being able to be fully authentic in who you are.
Right. Yeah.
And that happens, when you can acknowledge that, and then even start to celebrate those differences. With my good friends who are white, we will laugh and joke about things, or if they say something that, might be mildly insensitive or something that's out there in the atmosphere that they need to know about. And, and I say it to them, they don't get, like start to cry or say, "Oh, but you know me." I wouldn't say that or do that. They just say, "Okay,
my best friend is black." That's the one that you don't want to hear. When they say that, "My best friend is black," you be like, gotcha. Because you are not right if you think it's saying something like that. Yeah.
Well, and I think that in the evolution from trying to open up your eyes to it, I think there becomes, like, once you start to recognize and say, okay, I see that there's a difference here, then I think the next step, at least for me, was to feel uncomfortable then and be like, okay, well, what do I need to understand? Like, what do I do differently? Because you just don't know what to do now, right? Like, I'm past it now, but like, I remember when I was first learning, there was a stage where it was just kind of like, well, I don't know what to say then, right? Like, and I think that have you found that? I don't know what you're all in your research, like what are the stages, or how do we get through those?
Well,
Help people through.
I'm smiling and I'm laughing and I'm wanting to, like, give you a hug, because when you were saying, when I was learning, or first of all, we're all learning, and we're always going to be learning. And so we have to get used to discomfort. That's the first step, because if you stay with discomfort long enough, there's learning behind that.
Right, yeah.
And that is true for all of us, because we have to learn how to live with discomfort, how to live with ambiguity, how to live with nuances. We are wired for certainty. Human beings are wired for certainty. That's why right now people are, fighting and uncomfortable, or wanting to stay in their silos and their echo chambers, because people like to be grounded, and those things are certain, but that's not the way it's going to be. It's never been. There's if we are going to, we're evolving. People are dynamic and evolving. That's what being human means. And so learning to live with the discomfort, and then having a degree of, what we call, cultural humility, that, we don't know everything. We don't, have it all together, but having a respect and giving everybody grace. We try to do that, try to call people in, with not call them out. In other words, I try to do the work that I do. And when I mess up, with someone who is, LGBTQ, or with my Jewish friends, or with someone with, with disabilities, I hope I can, I try to give them the same grace. I would hope that people, I would want, when people mess up with me in terms of say something as Black or woman,
Right.
I give them the same grace, because I want them to give me the same grace when I mess up.
Well,
Makes
yeah.
sense.
I
Yeah.
will.
I'll tell you something interesting is, like, I was happy that she knew how to season. That's what I was happy with food. Because, we're all about season. Like, we season, and I was like,
I know.
I've dated some other races, and you're like, man, you need some salt and a little pepper, But she knows how her food is seasoned, which, shocked me. I was like, man, it's good.
And we're laughing about that, but it is so true.
Oh, yeah.
It is so true.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that's like, it's like what for me, like what's happening right now in our country. I've seen this before. You know what I mean? So it's not something new to me.
I know
what I'm watching.
Said, these are unprecedented times.
Yes,
but it's not for us.
Not for us, but for a lot of people, they're like, oh my gosh, this happening. Like, man, we've been telling you about this for a long time. This is how people think sometimes, and you gotta learn to, and I've learned to maneuver around it and don't let it, I can watch it all day, but then don't care about it the next hour. I'm going to do what I want to do to have fun. So I've learned, to deal with this kind of stress, because we've seen it, so much of it. It's for me, it's nothing new. So
we call it racial stamina. That's the psychological term, and what we try to do, and this goes back to your question, Bettijo, about the, what can you do in terms of the discomfort? Anytime you stay with that discomfort long enough to have a learning about it, or you become more facile in it, you are building your racial stamina. And that's a really good thing.
Yeah, and then, not every race, but some of the races, I'm like, I tried to tell you what was going to happen. You didn't listen, you know what I mean? Because you thought that, you're just doing that because you're Black. No, I'm doing it because I know already, and the thing about knowing, I think when you know, it's easier to deal with than when you don't know. When it comes as a shock, it's just a blow to your head, like, I thought, no, you thought that, but we used to think this too, but we always saw it come back to the same line, and I think for us, the only way this country is going to change is going to be unity of everybody. That's the only way this country is going to change. We can't do it by ourselves.
It doesn't mean uniformity, which is why go back to underscoring that we have to learn how to live with ambiguity about change, evolving, and the better that we can do that, then the more grounded we'll be. And it's for the benefit of all of us.
That's exactly right.
We're not going away. Integration is not going away. All of these, we can't whitewash history. None of these things are not going to go away.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. It's the only way not to repeat the past is to know it.
Well, and I love what she said too about the antidote really for the discomfort is the humility to say, okay, what do I need to learn here? What can I learn and grow? And that we all recognize that, hey, we're learning and growing every day. Like should be our purpose, right? And if we take that on as a purpose instead of the comfort tempting us to just like retreat back into our shell and say, okay, well, I can't do this. Pushing beyond and learning.
Yeah, what I always say is take the blinders off and see what's going on. Because I always tell people, if it's happening to one people, it's going to happen to the next. It's just a matter of time.
And this is why we need friends across racial lines.
Yes.
This is why we need interracial friendships.
Yep.
Because that's where we learn.
Yeah.
Because there's a degree of trust, there's a degree of comfort there, and there's an egalitarian relationship when in a friendship that doesn't happen in a power dynamics like at work.
That's
Right.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you have those egalitarian relationships where you're equal partners and you can, trust each other, then the learning becomes very easy.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, very, but easier.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
it's like landing on a soft pillow.
Yeah. Yep. Somebody, and it's somebody willing to like, oh, okay, well, let me tell you that sounded really bad, right?
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
and why,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like those
You know, I
conversations.
was like, you don't
that-
want to say that. Say, don't ever say that in front of black people. I don't want somebody punching you.
Yeah.
I got to defend
Because
you.
you're giving each other permission,
Yeah.
and encouragement to say, hey, I love you enough that I'm going to protect you,
Yeah.
but also and support you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And growth only happens when you have a balance between challenge and support.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
if there's no challenge, then and all you get is support, you're not going to learn. And same if you
Yeah.
have support and all support, support and no challenge, you don't learn. That's that
I love
healthy
that.
balance.
I love that. That's so
Wow.
smart.
This was very informative.
So
I'm glad,
great.
glad we had you today. I really
Oh,
enjoyed
it's
it.
Great
Thank-
to have the conversation with you.
Thank you for joining
Definitely.
us, Dr. Plummer. It's ToddFlix time.
Oh, ToddFlix. Well, today I'm talking about Chicago PD. They're going into their, I guess, 13th year they're going into, and it's a Dick Wolf production, so all Dick Wolf shows are always good. I
yeah,
found
he's
that
like
his-
the Law and Order guy, right?
Yeah, but I've always found his police shows to be good. And this, this drama, it's a unit of Chicago PD led by Sergeant Hank Voight, played by Jason
Begay.
Begay.
Jason
I had it
Begay.
earlier. Jason Begay. And they investigate major crimes like drug trafficking, organized crime. They also investigate gangbangers.
They kind of take on like the special,
The
like
stuff
it's-
that no one else can handle.
And I actually think as a show, it makes it really nice because
Yes.
you're not just doing one type all the time. They can kind of
well, they
change
switch
it up.
up. They
with the
even do child
storyline.
abduction. They do a little bit
Yeah.
of everything. It depends on what they want to
Yeah.
do. But they're involved with, like, sometimes there's police corruption. The police officers are bad. They got to go after them, and I don't want to really ruin the show for you, but what's amazing about the show I have found is the family unity.
Yeah,
that
the
they
way
have together. They really protect each other. And this is a family, basically, what they have.
It's a good show. It's actually one of the first that we started
That's
watching
right.
together, and it's a spin-off, technically, of Chicago Fire.
Yes,
I
it
didn't know
is.
which one was first, but it's part of that Chicago
I think Chicago
universe.
Fire was first.
And there's Chicago Med now
Man,
too.
yeah, the Chicago. But I've tried to watch those, but I just.
I know
it's
Chicago
tough.
PD is my favorite too.
Yeah, mine too, and it's really good. I think you can stream it right now on on NBC Peacock. You can
Yeah.
stream it. They have 12 seasons right now. You can go through it, and 13 seasons coming up. So I can't see what's going to happen because I hear that things are going to change and shift a little bit. But what you have to get used to is now some officers come in and they're there for a little time and then they're gone. People,
go.
so don't.
Wait, what's the one that he's on? Is he on? He's on another show now too. Like some of the other shows have stolen some of their.
Well,
cast.
and I think that he left that show. He's on, but it's still Dick Wolf though.
Is it?
Yeah, he's on the
Because it's
FBI.
confusing
He's
to me.
on
That
FBI
show will come on
International.
and I'll be like, which show is this?
Yeah, he's on FBI International.
Yes.
But he went from Chicago PD to
PD.
FBI International because they needed a new lead for that. And I don't know why the other guy left. I don't know what happened with the other guy, but I like him, so I like the new.
Yeah, you're glad that he's still
the-
there.
I like the second. I like the other guy they had too, and I was like, oh man, they're replacing him. And then when I saw him, I was like, oh my gosh, I like him. So it's good. I think you should check it out. You'll love it. Chicago PD, and you can watch it on Peacock, and you can stream it.
Well, dang. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Please like and subscribe. And remember, we're always here. If you have some things you want us to talk about, send us an email and let us know.
share this episode with a friend.
Share with a friend. Let people understand what's really going on. Talk to you soon. Bye. Dang is produced by my wife, Bettijo Bridges, in collaboration with Star Worldwide Network Studios, and edited by our daughter, Adelie Ann.
She's also the musician responsible for our theme music, so go check out Adelie Ann wherever you stream your music. Have a question or topic you want us to cover? Send us your suggestions at dangpodcast.com.
Do me a favor. Please subscribe and rate our podcast to make it easier for others to find. Have a great week.
Yeah,